Hello and welcome. I'm Randy Bell, the director of the Atlantic Council Global Energy Center, standing in for our CEO, Fred Kemp, who has had a hard drive failure this morning. I'd like to welcome you to AC Front Page, our premier live ideas platform for global leaders. Today, we have the distinct pleasure of hosting Mr. Claudio Descalzi, Chief Executive Officer of the Italian energy company Eni, for a discussion of Eni's strategy in a year of disruptions and their transition from an oil and gas company to a diversified energy company, which has led Bloomberg to declare them the greenest oil company. The Global Energy Center, which organized today's event, has been working closely on the very issues that we will discuss today: the role of oil and gas companies in the energy transition, how the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the energy industry and the transition, and the importance of environmental, social, and governance policies to restoring the industry's social license to operate. Mr. Descalzi has guided Eni to become a leader in the oil and gas industry in preparing for and playing a supportive role in the energy transition. And his insights into the industry, particularly this year as COVID-19's impact on oil demand has forced the industry to reckon with the potential future of increasingly depressed demand, will be invaluable as companies and policymakers chart a path forward. Also joining the discussion today is former U.S. Secretary of Energy and President and Chief Executive Officer of the Energy Futures Initiative, Ernest Moniz, whose responses will add depth and provide further insight into energy policy as the industry transitions to reduce emissions. Like all of you in our audience, I'm eager to hear from Mr. Descalzi and begin what promises to be an engaging discussion. One logistical note: to follow along on Twitter, please use the hashtag #ACFrontPage. So, Mr. Descalzi, welcome. It's so great to see you this morning.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to start off with the first question, which is a broad one. But in broad strokes, what do you see as the role of the oil and gas industry in the energy transition?
So, first of all, I think that the oil and gas industry can play an important role in the energy transition. But when we talk about transition, is not just a matter of energy. When we talk a transition, we talk about change. So we talk a transition from a cultural point of view. We talk about technology, and we talk about a different kind of model, because it's clear that now we are facing a dramatic pandemic that had found the planet unprepared from a health, social, and economic point of view. And we are facing an energy, industrial, and cultural transition related to the climate change, coupled with the already existing energy security issue that we have to handle during this transition, because we have to change a lot of energy sources. And then we have a third point, that is a big gap of inequality between developed and developing countries. That is, that this pandemic event increased and made even more evident. So in order to tackle these different variables, that is not just a change in energy, I think that we need really a common consensus of all the countries, institutions, and clearly in general the industries, a commitment, general rules, and a strong commitment. Because if you look at what have been said in COP21 in Paris in 2015, after the period, everybody showed a strong commitment, but at the end of the day, the CO2 emission increased of 1 gigaton per year. So that means that not all the countries, not all the industries, not all the players are ready. Clearly, we have different kind of situation in the developed country and developing countries. Developed countries, clearly, that represent altogether about 60% of the GDPs, has have more responsibility, so they have to act, and they have to act together with a general plan. And at the moment, that is not happening. What happened in our company, so our transition, now I talk about our point of view. Our transition started 6 years ago, and we move on considering three main areas. First, we started working on a culture transition inside the company. And we moved from an oil and gas integrated company to an energy company. That was the first cultural move. And second, we changed our mission statement that has been tailor-made, considering and incorporating all the 17 UN SDG. That's for performing a just transitions. And then a strong focus on technology, proprietary technology. We invested more than 4 billion in about 5 years in new technology to transform our industry, especially in the area of the hard-to-abate emissions. So I'm talking about refineries, power plant, and chemicals, and in the upstream. So we move on three different streams to be able to start from a general consensus inside the company. So a bottom-up movement. And my choice was to work on proprietary technologies. We developed more than 7,800 patents, new patents, and about 480 projects for the energy transitions. And we built at home, because that was the way to change the culture of the people, because they participate to all the different change, to the strategy, which kind of implementation or which kind of target we define on these trajectories of the new technologies. So we started a big investment. We increased the number of researchers from 250 to 1,500. We opened more than 7 research centers in Italy. We started agreement, connection, interaction, and exchange of technology with more than 70 university and research centers. The aim was, like we do in exploration, to have a very short time to market. What I mean is, we have an R&D, we have a technology. In few years, we must pass to the industrial initiatives. That happened for the biofuel. The technology for biofuel is our proprietary technology. We transformed to standard refinery in biorefineries. That has been done in 2-3 years. Now they are running, and we are reaching almost 1 million ton of biofuel per year, with a very interesting internal rate of return, but with the result of reduce massively the CO2 emissions, and move far from the hydrocarbon, because we are using in this case biomass or palm oil at the moment until 2023. Then we are using advanced feedstock, first and second generation, that are not in conflict with food. So that has been something that we did from the R&D to the development. The time to market was 3.5 years. And that happened also in the waste to fuel technology. So we try to apply to the technology a time to market that is 1/3 or the normal time to market when you develop an R&D, then a technology, and then you scale up to the industrial final used. So we really we accelerate this acceleration in terms of technology and cultural acceleration impacted all the company. We are in 64 countries. We have direct and indirect people, about 70,000 people, so a huge number of people. So the cascade and the communication was a crucial aspect to talk with the people, to talk with the manager, to promote the young people to really be part of these transitions. Then COVID came, and then the demand went down. So clearly, when you transform your company, you need culture, a new culture, you need a clear mission statement, you need technology, but you need also money. So the issue has been also how to funding all the new initiatives. And that is crucial. And it's not just crucial for us, it's crucial for all the companies. And another aspect was to involve also the countries, the developing countries where we are present, to use new technology, to invest with us in new technology. One of the first point was to replace the gas that we use in our internal consumptions to produce the energy for our machineries, and replace this gas with renewables. That has been done in Algeria, that has been done in Tunisia. We have project in Ghana, we have project in Congo, we have project in Egypt. So that is a way to really to impact also the energy mix of the country where we are. That is not enough, clearly, to really to make the big leap, because then you need also to expand and work on the new product. And that is our aim. So our aim is to impact on the scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3, and really be focused on our customers. We are a company, we are an oil and gas company, but we have a big differentiation. We have more than 9 million customers that we want to bring at 20 million customers. And our aim is to sell only green, blue, or bioproducts. So incorporating the scope 3 without giving the responsibility to our customers of the scope 3, but take upfront, upstream, the decarbonization of all these projects. So I think that at the moment, I can stop here. So if you have any question or other point to touch.
I mean, that's a lot, a rich amount of material to dig into. My first question, Eni was a leader in thinking about how oil and gas companies can play a role in the energy transition. It's pretty common now for oil and gas companies to be making big climate change related pledges. But as a leader, what drove you to make that decision early on, and how was that decision taken by your peers, by the media, by the rest of the energy community?
Yes, first of all, big discussion inside our board, and why I decided to do that so rapidly and started by the end of 2014. First of all, because I felt that the volatility of crude price was there after 6-7 years and more at the price at $110 per barrel, then start going down, and then fluctuation, volatility. So I saw that we had a big chance, because we have a lot of customers. So a big chance to move downstream, move retail where we are, and stay a little bit far from the volatility of all the oil and gas. Then, if you look at what happened in Europe, at this period we did have big pressure on climate change. But if you look at the consumptions, oil demand in Europe was really steady and maybe going down. in the last 10 years. So we already had signal of some difficulties in Europe, I talk, not around the world, for the commodity. And all my customers, all my downstream, all my chemicals are in Europe. So excess of products in the refineries, and the need for different kind of products, because in Europe we had a law, a decree that then became a law in all the other countries to mix up our diesel with biodiesel at a level of 10-15% by 2020. For that reason, we start rapidly to develop technology to be able to produce biofuel. Now we are not, we reached this target, but we are even go farther, because we can use 100% of biofuel in existing heavy truck engine. We tested for some years, so without changing the engine, we can use 100%. That is a big improvement, because we are completely detached from the hydrocarbon, primary hydrocarbon, and in Italy we don't produce, so we have to import, big logistics costs. So that was for going out from the volatility of the oil, crude oil, and reduce the logistics cost, and align my company to the first signal of something that was changing. So I tried to do really rapidly, with a clearly big discussion at the board level. And then after the first refinery, the biorefinery, and the second one, good result, internal rate of return that is moving between 15 and 17%. So not so far from the upstream business. Then we take off and we go ahead with the rest of the transition.
Got it. In your first remarks, you talked about the developing world a lot. How do you make sure that the energy transition advances in all regions and across all sectors of the economy, while also ensuring energy access, so particularly in the developing world?
So that is a point, right? Because when we talk about transition, and I talk a lot about transition, and that was one of my first strategic point that presented to the board, the issue that when we talk about transition, we think about OECD country, we think about ourselves, but then we have a huge number of people, maybe 83-84% of the worldwide population, that is in a lack of energy, especially electricity. If you think that Africa counts for 17% of the overall population, the same number of population of all the OECD countries together, but they use just 3-4% of the energy. They have more than 600 in Africa, 650 million people that don't have access to electricity. And then they produce just 4% of the total CO2 emissions. So really, they have more energy in terms of oil and gas and solar than the US. So you can imagine the big gap with these countries. Now we have to ask them, please change completely. You cannot use crude, you cannot use gas, you have to just use renewable. So the situation is not easy. What we can do, what we are doing, first of all, is to, and that has been done in the past, investing to give them access to energy. So that was one of the first points I faced, but that before became the CEO, that was to invest Africa for Africa. And what I mean that when I found gas before, okay, we sent, we use LNG, but now most of the gas that we have found, we give this gas to the countries. And that is not easy because there is no infrastructures. So you have to build power plant, and we invested as any 2.5 billion for gas power plant in some countries for more than 1 gigawatt. Then we have to invest in the high tension line and distribution as well to keep electricity. Now, with this action, now we are covering about 20 million people that before they were without electricity, or they used biomasses that was impacting the forest, the primary and secondary forest, and it caused a lot of damage, especially on the domestic situation. So Africa or the developing country, you must help them to change the energy mix, use their own energy. Clearly, when you do that, you take a risk because it's much easier for an LC company to find gas and then use LNG and sell gas to different markets. There is securitization in your payment, you can recover your investment. When you invest in exploration, then in development, and the gas is used for the countries, the risk is higher. But maybe you reduce a little bit your profit, but you are increasingly, you increase enormously the value for the country and for your company, because normally we stay for 40, 50, 60 years in the country. So you must be part of the country. And if you take risk, you become credible. And then you can create value for your company as well.
Thank you so much. I'd like to turn to Secretary Moniz now for his take on this, for his response.
Okay, well, thank you, Randy, and pleasure to be with Claudio again. First, let me say that Claudio mentioned the big push that Eni has done in the last 6 years, but I want to also say that there was a prequel. And if I go back almost 10 years before that, Eni was an anchor partner when I was the head of the MIT Energy Initiative. And it's very interesting that already back then, Eni's kind of featured investment was not on better ways of finding oil and gas. It was on solar energy and novel technologies to advance solar energy. So that goes back quite a while, and I really want to congratulate Eni now for this new thrust, which I do believe prepares it well for the future. I would just mention in terms of now the oil and gas company transition that again, together with Claudio and others, I was part of 2 meetings in the Vatican where we had the CEOs of 10 major oil and gas companies, the leaders of even a greater number of major financial institutions. And in 2019, all of the oil and gas company CEOs signed 2 statements, one on the need for pricing carbon emissions and one on the need for improving disclosure and transparency on carbon performance. And all within the construct of the Pope's emphasis on stewarding the climate, stewarding the earth, and doing it with social justice. So I think we're seeing this trend across the industry. But again, I think Eni is certainly out there in the front ranks of walking that talk. So that's terrific. Now, in terms of the transition, I think as Claudio said, there are certainly some new business model aspects, such as some of the oil and gas companies looking to be major suppliers of electricity, for example, particularly as it may displace some of the transportation fuels through electrification. But I would also add something that I think is very important, and that is that the skill set, the capabilities in the oil and gas industry have many applications in the energy system we imagine at the end of this transition. Issues like carbon capture and sequestration, carbon dioxide removal from the atmosphere. Some of those pathways requiring sequestration as well. Low carbon fuel development, hydrogen development, in some sense as the new natural gas, serving many end uses, including industry, for example. So I think the evolving business models in the oil and gas sector, ironically, may even provide a broader scope of energy services than has been the case traditionally, as they use their current skill sets, but also go off into areas like electrification. So I think that's really going to be a very, very important issue for the entire new energy economy, where we are heading, I might add, to a dramatically more ambitious target than was the case in Paris, namely more and more the realization of net zero by mid-century as being required. I'd add a comment as well domestically that, of course, we will have a new administration in the United States. The legislative side of the equation remains unresolved, and that's of course also very important. We'll know on January the 5th. But the thing is that President-elect Biden has basically put forward a very, very strong commitment on energy and climate, and it's got really, in my view, two overarching requirements, objectives. One is the net zero that I mentioned. Of course, with a subsidiary, even more ambitious, clean electricity sector as early as 2035. I would just say that that goal in particular, it's not impossible, it's tough, but it's possible only with a very much ramped up commitment to innovation. And I mean now. This decade has to be the decade of supercharged innovation if we are going to have a chance to meet those 2035 and 2050 goals. So I think that's number one. Number two is that the president-elect committed to meeting those goals while also having the social justice agenda integrated into the program. That has many features, of course, domestically, very, very important. A, it's the right thing to do, but B, it would also help, frankly, minimize political headwinds to an ambitious climate program. But also, the social justice agenda has a significant international component. And there again, that's something that Claudio's already discussed. Certainly has a very large footprint in Africa. And I will just advertise that in early December, a commission that I co-chair, the Global Commission to End Energy Poverty. It's co-chaired by the head of the Rockefeller Foundation, Raj Shah, the head of the African Development Bank, and myself. And this will be putting a spotlight on what Claudio mentioned in terms of the enormous needs for energy access as a way of addressing poverty overall. It's a necessary condition in order to be addressed, the poverty, the economic development, the women's empowerment, many agendas that are critical for these countries. And there, what we think is you might say the two critical issues that we see are, number one, the weakest link in the electricity distribution, in the electricity system, is in fact, the distribution part of the equation. And secondly, we must clean up the biomass cooking that is providing such environmental damage and such health damage, particularly to women and children. So I think Claudio's agenda, the president-elect's agenda, our agenda are all very, very much aligned. Now we have to go out and do it, and it will be a challenge.
Secretary Muniz, thank you so much. make this a conversation because Descalzi, I know there are a couple of areas where Secretary Moniz spoke where NE has really been a leader. Secretary Moniz mentioned that this is the decade where we need innovation, supercharge innovation, I think was the phrase, and also that the President-elect Biden's plan to decarbonize the electricity sector in the United States is hugely ambitious. Now, what was seen at the time as a pretty almost outlandish investment, though now you're seen as being sort of visionary in Commonwealth fusion systems. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that investment, how you see the role of Commonwealth fusion potentially in meeting some of NE's business strategy, but also hitting some of the topics that Secretary Moniz discussed.
Thank you. Sorry, I tried to answer because I lost you for some times. I couldn't really follow everything, but I think that you asked about innovation, investment, innovation, and the priorities for investment. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I also asked about Commonwealth fusion systems.
Okay.
That investment in particular, because it touches on two of the points that Secretary Moniz made.
Yeah, yes, that is the future. But I think when we talk about magnetic fusion or nuclear fusion, we prefer to talk magnetic fusion because when you talk about nuclear fusion, everybody are scared because they don't know exactly what it is, but it's not the nuclear energy is something different. It's a solar energy that we are able to contain with magnetic. So that is something that we start some times ago in MIT, and then we invested a lot of money, and then we enter also in a new startup. We are very close. They are very close to reach a first prototype in the sense of the because the issue is to produce use more energy of what you are producing. So we must be positive in your energy production. And I think that we have this target by 2025, and by 2030, 2033, we will be able to have a prototype, the first plant. And that is really fantastic. That is really a breakthrough. That is innovation that the secretary said. You can imagine that with a bottle of water, heavy water, sea water, you can run a plant of 250 megawatts for 1 year. That is what can happen. So it means that you have a infinite source of energy, the heavy water. So we can say seawater. You can create energy in a very clean way without any kind of pollution, radiation, and danger for the humanity, and then really can become the future. That is real innovation. We put a huge amount of money, a huge investment. We work with the MIT, but then we created with them a startup, and we are following other startups. That is one of the main innovation, considering considering that we are working on renewable solar, wind, sea waves. We are developing our proprietary technology on that. But if you look at the density, the energy for the density of energy is really very low. So we need really to have something that for unit of surface is very efficient for the energy production. So nuclear fusion is clearly one of the main innovation which we have to invest. If we back through on that, I think that everything that now it looks very good for the future immediately became old, and we can create energy at very low cost. That is what we have to do, because wind, solar, hydrogen as well are good, but are still very old from a technological point of view. We need really a big leap to reach something new. And I agree that these 10 years in face of us that we have in front of us, really we have to put all our effort. For that reason, we put a big amount of money. You can imagine during the depression with a very low oil price, we put about more than 4 billion euro for new technology, because I think that is the solution.
Thank you. Secretary Muniz, on this, you have a comment first.
Yeah, actually, if I may follow up on that, on the innovation discussion and the fusion, although for transparency, I have to say that despite my MIT DNA, I'm on the board of another fusion company with an entirely different approach called TAE. But the point I really want to emphasize is that we have never seen so much innovation in the nuclear sphere, both fission and fusion, as we are seeing right now. Certainly in the United States, and I would include Eni's investment with Commonwealth, that it's amazing how this innovation has been and is being carried by mostly private sector funding. I think that's great, but frankly, I think we are going to also need, not only in nuclear, but in other areas, much more public-private partnership, much more, in the US certainly, much more government engagement. We estimate that a thrust in carbon dioxide removal needs a $10 billion RD&D budget over 10 years. And that same scale, like a billion-ish a year, we need that in the nuclear realm. I think we need it in hydrogen. We need it if we're going to have really advanced low carbon fuels. These are game changers, big game changers. We are vastly underinvesting. We need the doubling or tripling of the US budget that has been called for a decade by industrial leaders, by company leaders in the United States. And furthermore, as we get back into the Paris Agreement with the new administration, as we hopefully reestablish a leadership role globally, we also need to reactivate, really amplify our role in what's called mission innovation that was established at COP21 in Paris, which means, look, areas like carbon dioxide removal, we should be working together across international boundaries to have this kind of a critical technology put in place. I might add, in ending, and by the way, I'm going to have to leave this conversation because in 21 minutes, I will be releasing a report that the Energy Futures Initiative is part of. It's a look at the New England pathways to meet net zero. As you know, New England does not have a lot of native energy resource, so it's challenging. But there in the electricity sector, we do find that about 70% in mid-century will be taken up by wind and solar. And frankly, in this part of the world, offshore wind will have to be a major part of that approach. But but that does not disguise the fact that there will need to be firm electricity generation available when you want it, anytime. Fusion would be a fabulous way of doing that. Fission could do it in the right places. Natural gas and CCS could do it. Solving the long-term storage issue. I don't mean hours with batteries. I mean weeks, months, and seasons. Maybe hydrogen would play that role. But these are the kinds of big developments that we need. And again, I would certainly in leaving the conversation again really give Claudio and Eni a lot of credit for being for really putting big bets down on big leaps forward. And that's what we need. And I certainly am in the camp that we need the energy businesses, including the oil and gas companies, to be part of the solution, and have them as part of the winning coalition in addressing our climate goals. So, if I may excuse myself from the conversation, but I've appreciated the opportunity to weigh in and effectively support the arguments being put forward by Claudio.
Secretary Moniz, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. And you answered my question, so I feel we're on the same page on that. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very
Okay.
good to see you. Good luck with your report launch.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Descalzi, why don't we start turning to the audience for questions now? We do have a live question coming in from Rachel Kite, former head of Sustainable Energy for All, and I think she'll get onto the some of the topics about the developing world and energy access that we were talking about earlier. So, Rachel, thank you so much for joining us today. Real pleasure to see you again.
Well, hi, Randy, and hello, Claudio. It's lovely to hear any sort of doubling down on what the leadership in the industry thinks about the transition and how to keep pushing forward. I suppose I had a couple of questions building very much on the conversation, building very much on what Ernie had just said, which is, not every oil and gas company is making the same bets that you are. And of course, the largest part of oil and gas production is with national oil companies and not with international oil companies. So I asked this question also because Italy will be the chair of the G20 next year. 2021 is a critical year for speeding up the energy transition at a time when the world is preoccupied with stimulating an economic recovery from COVID. And so what do you think you need from governments in order to sort of speed up the energy transition? You're going to do everything that you're doing. You're making some big bets. You're, green, blue, and bio. That's very clear. But what do you need from governments in order to make your role amplified and to see some of the benefits of the approach that you're taking spread out through the economy more globally, and as you said, to tackle both decarbonisation but also the corrosive effect of inequality on welfare around the world?
Thank you. Thank you for the questions. So there are two questions. One is related to the NOC that handle the majority of the resources, and clearly we can be efficient and we can do our best to reduce CO2 emissions. But if I'm able in my company to really reach the zero footprint, I'm going to reduce about 500, maybe less million ton per year. That is a lot, but it's nothing compared to the 33 gigaton of CO2 produced from the energy system. So we need really to develop something that is going outside the IOC, is involving the NOC, is involving also all the different countries. The first point is dialogue. Dialogue means understanding the different kind of steps, and sometimes I've been very radical in my company to convince everybody with my people to go toward a change. But sometimes when there is really radicalization or the issue became ideological and you are looking for an enemy, you are not able to solve the issue. I just give you an example. One example is the CCS and CCUS, but especially the CCS. If we want really to replace and to go ahead with the transition and replace old energy with new energy, we cannot scrap everything and start from scratch, because it's impossible. You know, the penetration, the rate of penetration of a new energy is very long. For coal, it took 60 years to reach 50%. For oil, 60 years to reach 40%. For gas, 60 years to reach 25%. And for renewables, after 20 years, where we are investing worldwide more than $3.5 trillion and just investment, plus about 3 billion of subsidies, and we reach overall in the energy about 2-3% on electricity, 7-8, worldwide in Europe 17-18%. So it's a very long path. So I think that we have to accept compromise and really accept an energy mix that is changing. When we were talking, I say you talk, we talked together about the CCS, though. So the capability to capture CO2 from existing hard to abate plant, and the plant, you know, power plant, but we talk about refineries, but we talk about chemical plant, and all other kind of compressors, all other machineries that not just energy company, but customers, big industry like cement, like steel, ammonia. So all these big producers CO2, they need to capture. We have to accept that for a transition, we have to reduce investment using what is existing and capture the CO2, and then when you capture this CO2, that is the first step. Then we go to something that will be completely green. So in this area, we are working with the NOC, and the NOC are working with us. In Abu Dhabi, we have project now that before we were maybe we didn't think about capturing the CO2. Now we are capturing there. We are capturing in Libya. Norway is already 10 years. Now in UK is progressing, and in UK is giving incentives. And no, it's not the same worldwide, but that is the first step. A step that the blue product, so the product that from which we have captured the CO2, is important, and the government has to give incentive. If we have new product without CO2, that means that we invested to capture the CO2. That means that this product must have a premium. Or we have a very efficient carbon pricing, or we have a carbon tax. So with the carbon tax, we can justify a CCS, maybe without incentive, because otherwise, if you don't use CCS, we have to pay a tax. And that is a way to don't pay a tax. But we have to find a common framework that where all the different countries, not just Europe, the US, China, all the countries that produce big emissions, they must have a framework or incentives or tax also to avoid carbon leakage that help the company to make the investment. That is essential. And we are not there. There are a lot of talk, a lot of work, but really little actions. And it's good for a country to give a target. You have to reduce 60%, 50%, 100%, but that is not enough. It's not enough because you must follow up with the enablers and with the incentives, with the framework that help investors to make an investment with some securitization, or at least with some time frame to recover the investment. So the effort must be homogeneously distributed and discussed between politicians and institutions, but not just, talking about something. You need competencies, you need law, you need sit down, and you need to talk with all the players without any radicalization and without looking for an enemy.
Thanks so much. Really, really appreciate that. That really in-depth answer. For everyone out in the audience, and Rachel, thank you so much for joining us today and for your question. For everyone out in the audience, you can post questions in the Q&A. We have a bunch coming in already. And I'd like to do a follow-up to your comment, Mr. Descalzi, about the length of the energy transition and how it takes time to change the energy mix. We have a question from Doug Hengel, who asks about what you see as the role of natural gas in the energy transition. Is it a bridge fuel? What role might it play?
So I think natural gas is really one of the first, maybe the main hydrocarbon that can really accompany and help the transition. First of all, because in terms of emission is half of the other hydrocarbons and is not producing fine dust or other sub-products. Is clean, is not clean, is cleaner than other hydrocarbons. But we have to consider that worldwide have been made huge amount of investment in terms of regasifiers, pipes, billion and billion and billions, and all the networks and all our customers worldwide, especially in OECD countries, really rely on this gas fuel feedstock. And there's been very powerful, if you look at the US in less than 20 years reduce emission about 25%, just replacing coal with gas. That was a market issue because gas was cheaper than coal. But that was really important. It's a demonstration. The same kind of stuff happened in UK. But the government UK decided really to work on renewable gas, nuclear to eliminate coal, another source of energy that creates strong emissions. So gas is essential. Gas is essential, and from all the forecasts, all the analysis made by different agencies, the only hydrocarbon that is going to grow, not a lot, but grow until 2050. But I can add more. Gas, we can use gas, and we can decarbonize gas using CCS. Also, gas can be used using all the infrastructure, as I said before, removing the CO2 component. But then that is not alone. We have to use gas, but we have to use wind, we have to use solar, we have to use hydrogen, that at the beginning can be blue hydrogen, because through the steam reformer you capture the CO2, and you have a product that is a feedstock that is completely carbon free, and green hydrogen as well, when the cost will be reasonable. So we have to look at the energy as a mix of different components. Why? Because we added in the last 150 to 100 years different kind of a framework or network, and we cannot cancel or delete or scrap overnight. So we have to be reasonable in this kind of discussion, but with the aim to reach clear target in terms of decarbonization.
Got it. Thank you. I'd like to turn now to another question that is on video. This one was actually pre-recorded from Halima Croft, Atlanta Council board member and head of commodity strategy at RBC Capital Markets. Halima recorded this back when we thought Fred was moderating today. So she does acknowledge Fred in this, and that acknowledgement still stands. But let's go to Halima's question now.
Thank you so much, Fred. And it's so fantastic to have Claudio here with Secretary Moniz. It's a fantastic event for the Atlantic Council. Claudio, you really talked about Africa being this second home for Eni. I'm wondering if you can talk about the progress that African producers are making to prepare for an eventual energy transition. Do you think they're doing enough work in terms of diversification of their economy, improving governance? And what will the challenges be for a company like Eni operating in these producers if they fail to sort of get their system right as they prepare for a transition?
Thank you. So as you said, Africa is our second home. We grew up there, so we are in 14 countries, and we are in different kind of activities because we are in gas, in oil, liquefaction plant. We are in agriculture. We are in power plant, in distribution, in electricity. We developed so different kind of activities. Clearly, in the last 6-7 years, we had a very low prices, and Africa, especially some countries, more the country that relied only on oil and gas, suffers and are suffering a lot. So that was bad from one side, but I can say an opportunity, not good, but an opportunity from the other side to start a diversifications. We work a lot, through the SDGs, UN SDGs, with the UNDP in Ghana and in other countries in Congo, Angola, to work for create a diversifications. Agriculture, when I said that we are working in agriculture because we are training and we are working agriculture in Nigeria, we are working for a long time now in Ghana, and we are working in agriculture in Tunisia, for example, where we plant a castor oil that is a feedstock for our biorefinery and other product. So I think that Africa feels the need to a diversification. So not just in terms of energy, I say in terms of really do something differently. And renewables, we are developing renewables in the same countries, and we have big projects in Algeria, for example, but also in North Africa in general, and in Sub-Saharan. Renewable is very important. Off-grid, because the grid is not really present, off-grid, to serve the different village and to reduce the use of biomass that are so negative for the health, especially young people, and for the domestic life, eating and for eating and warming. So I think there is a transformation. The main, we can say, the main discoveries we made in the last 6-7 years are mainly gas related. So that is good. That is good because gas is helping them to grow, reducing the emissions. And that combining with renewables, and that combining with the diversification, that is agriculture. But that diversification is also health, is education. So all the points that are touched by UN SDGs are so essential to change radically the culture. We are putting a big effort on that. Clearly, the effort must be bigger, using institutions, using Europe that is really close to Africa, and through this kind of directives really can help them to improve the situation from any point of view.
Thank you. And you and Secretary Moniz both emphasized this issue with biomass as a health issue in developing countries. Can't be said too much. We have a great follow-on question from Carlos dos Santos, who's the ambassador of Mozambique to the US. And he asks if you can talk about local content and capacity building.
As Mozambique, I think is really will be a big contributor in the gas landscape for the future, because in the two blocks, area 4, area 1, where we are just in area 4, but in area 1, Total is the operator, and we are with Exxon and NEC in the area 4. Have been discovered about 190 TCF of gas, a huge amount. We are developing a Coral LNG. Coral is a offshore LNG. Clearly, we work a lot to develop local competencies, because it's a green field from that point of view, because that will be the first production. So we work locally with also we can in training in Italy and in Mozambique to prepare people, operators, engineers for the future development and management of this asset. We have to invest a lot. We have, I think, to invest a lot on this. But again, also for Mozambique, I think that we have to invest on the development of these big fields, but also on the diversification. A country can't put all the eggs in one single basket, because then we have a situation of volatile prices. We have it down very low in the market, and the country remain without defense. So I think that the diversification in terms of skill, what we are doing in Africa and also in Mozambique, is essential to give a more sure future to the country.
Got it. Thank you. Now, we have a bunch of great questions in the Q&A, so we've agreed to go a little bit long today to get to some more of these. I'd like to move the topic a little bit north to the East Med and ask Charles Alinas's question. Based on Eni's new strategy, how do you see the future of developing East Med hydrocarbons?
So when we talk about East Med, I think we talk about a huge amount of discoveries until now. We talk about Egypt. We talk about Israel, and these two countries has been made. We made in Egypt, but has been made a huge amount of discoveries, and these discoveries has been very useful and important for Egypt, because Egypt passed from a importing gas, now is exporting gas. So change completely the economy of the countries. Israel is exporting, and then we have other two countries. Clearly, Cyprus is the first one. We are present. We have 7 blocks there with Total, and in Lebanon as well as blocks and field offshore, deep offshore field that we can develop. I think that is a very important hub for the future, also in terms of diversification, in terms of sending gas to Europe, and for the development of the local market that is improving and is increasing. So the potential is there. The resources are there. All the big actors, because you see, you have Shell, you have Exxon, you have Total, Eni, but so all the main IOC are there, and the NOC, especially when you talk about a company in Egypt, really they know very well the job, that there are good skills. They started working on this field in the 50s. So it's from a cultural point of view, from a skill point of view, they are very competent. So I think that if the geopolitics, if the international, so the geopolitics will allow this growth will happen. Clearly, is a question of dialogue. It was a question of invest in the development of this country. These countries need investment. They have resources. They have a big market close to them. Europe, they have LNG, they have pipe. So it's a big opportunity for them to create development. And development means peace, and peace means that we can improve the standard of life of everybody.
How optimistic are you that the geopolitical issues will get resolved and really unlock all the resources in the region?
That is a more difficult question. I can answer you in how long I can develop the field, but I can answer you in how long geopolitics issue can be solved, because are not really under control of. It's clearly not my control, but is a multilateral discussions where Middle Easters and Europe's, Americans, and you see recently Russian, Turkey, and Middle East. So it's really a melting point of different kind of discussion. I really hope that the discussion will be positive. We have the first positive signal in Libya, because finally the war that lasts 4 years now is at least stopped, and now there are discussions to understand the new government, the new leadership. In 1 year we have elections, so it's a big improvement. I think that if Libya issue will be solved, I think the rest will follow.
Got it. I'd like to end on a hard question, perhaps, but one that I think Annie is well situated to answer, which is coming from Andreas Macha, and he asks, what makes you optimistic that the energy transition will happen fast enough to keep warming to well below 2 degrees or even 1.5 degrees Celsius?
So, no problem. I have two sides. One side is optimistic because it's something that we must do. So I think that if you have to do something, you must do something at the end of the day. With the technologies, you have to follow and you have to deliver. I'm a little bit concerned about, the agreement and the discussion and the actions and the capability to have a common view from different countries, different states. And that is really, I think we lost sometimes. We lost some momentum after COP20, after 2015 in Paris. We lost some momentum. I think that we need more commitment from the institutions. You have to believe in something, and then you have to go ahead. Clearly, there is economic sacrifice. You have to reduce your, your profit. And it's not easy to a country, to companies to say you have to reduce your profit. But if there is value for everybody, value for future generations, value for everybody, and it's clear, I think that's, and new technology, because I think that, something that then can put everybody in agreement is the new strong breakthrough that couple profit, value, and everything. Otherwise, we are in a free market. I said before, the US was successful in reducing emissions because gas was cheaper than coal. It's not the case in Europe. It's not the case in other parts of the country. So you must believe. I'm optimistic that sooner or later we are going to reach a consensus and understanding. But to reach that, we have really to find compromise. We have to avoid absolutely to create. So energy is not an ideological issues. Is a tool. So for that reason, at the beginning, you say we have tool and we have a model. The model is really to put everybody together, and at the center of the model there is the human being. So if the green became an ideological and radical instrument and look just for enemies, or the oil and gas people just look for enemies, and they forget about that in the middle there is the human being, and you are killing people doing that, and you are losing time doing that just because you want to fight against everybody. There is the side where I'm a little bit pessimistic. But I hope that, reason and common sense will prevail.
Mr. Descalzi, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for your leadership and for Eni's leadership. We particularly, as you say, we've lost some momentum, and it's really the momentum has been kept up, at least in part, through the actions of Eni and companies like you. It's such a pleasure to work with you. So we look forward to seeing you again. Thanks also to Secretary Moniz for being here today, as well as Dr. Croft and Ms. Kite for joining the conversation. Always a pleasure to hear from them. I'd like to thank our team who helped put this event together, including Lauren Holland, Jasper Gilardi, David Yellen, Vicente Garcia, Jackson Styron, Roger Morales, and our excellent Global Energy Center intern, Frank Wiley. We look forward to seeing you at our next AC Front Page episode featuring the new Inter-American Development Bank President, Mauricio Clever-Caron, next Monday, November 23rd at 5 p.m. Eastern. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Mr. Descalzi.
Thank you.